Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, April 20th. Wow. April roars on. It's hard to believe. We took a week off to connect and reconnect and do all that good stuff. And Megan and June are here with me today. How are you guys?
Hi, doing well. Happy to be here looking at the end of April and getting ready for July. I know it seems like far away, but it's gonna be here fast.
Yeah. And it is rolling up on us. We've gotten some more bar results in over the last few weeks, and that's good. We're going to talk a little bit about those today. We're going to answer some student questions. We've got some great questions about study strategy and also some administrative questions, and just to catch everybody up to date on what's going on. So we're glad to have you with us if you are here live. If you're watching on the replay, glad to have you there as well. With that, Megan, I'm going to turn it over to you and you kick us off and let us know where we're going to start.
All right. I think we should start with our results from February. They've been rolling in. This week has been quiet, but last week was pretty busy, especially at the end of the week, which tends to be how it works. So I'm sure if you're in one of those jurisdictions, but some of the big ones we got were Texas and Florida, but let's walk through out in New York. So let's walk through the results that we got since the last time we met, and we'll chat about big picture and what it means. And so we got Iowa 64% pass rate, Washington State with 51%, Tennessee 41%, Vermont 47%, Florida, which we'll talk about a little bit more in depth in a minute, 44%, Pennsylvania 37%, Missouri 58%. South Dakota has not released a full pass rate yet, but their results are released. New York, we'll talk about in a minute. They had a 45% pass rate. Idaho, 51%. Utah, an outlier at 72%, an outlier in a positive way. Minnesota released, Texas released, but neither of those have released their stats yet. And then Maine had a 40% pass rate. So Jackson, before we get into the details with New York and Florida, those are pretty rough numbers, huh?
Yeah, they are rough numbers. And there's a pretty wide variance, which I think would cause some people to wonder what's going on. I'll say what we've said before. Where you see these outlier up numbers, they tend to be in smaller jurisdictions with very few bar takers and very few repeat takers. And that's what's moving the needle for them. But if you look at the big jurisdictions across the board, Florida, New York, they're coming in about the same. Pennsylvania, about the same. I suspect when we see the actual Texas numbers, it'll be about the same as Florida and New York. And this just indicates again that we are in an environment in which the bar exam is not just hard, it's brutally hard. And you and I talked, we did a special episode last week about Florida, and we came out and said it. We think the exam is unfair right now. Nonetheless, it is the exam and you got to take it, and it's not going away anytime soon. And so that is difficult for people. And June's going to talk a little bit later about mindset and this toxicity that we get around these things. I think it's important to put everything in perspective, and these numbers need to be kept into perspective. They are primarily more repeaters than first-time takers taking the exam, and repeaters are failing at about a 20 to 25% pass rate. That's what we're seeing nationally. Now, doesn't mean that has to be your pass rate, and it doesn't mean that it's our pass rate. It's just the reality of the world that we're in right now. And it is a very difficult environment, particularly for repeat bar takers. So that's the 30,000 foot view from where I'm sitting. You want to add to that?
Yeah, no, let's dive into some of these specific states that I know we have a lot of students in. We won't be able to talk about Texas yet because, like I said, they haven't released the statistics. But as soon as we have those at the next webinar, we'll be able to talk specifically about what we can see from the Texas numbers as well. But let's start with Florida, because I know we have a lot of Florida students. And gosh, we saw Florida's an interesting case, right? Because they have the Part A and Part B. And so in Florida, you can pass, let's say, the multi-state, and then have to come back and take the Florida only portion, or vice versa. You can pass the Florida only portion and have to come back and take the multi-state. And so it's a very interesting kind of situation there. And I don't know how much we're going to get into it on this webinar, but please listen, if you were a Florida taker or you're going to be taking Florida, please listen to the discussion that Jackson and I had specifically about Florida, because we get into some of the statistics around who failed, which like part A versus part B, things like that, versus who passed the entire exam or failed the entire exam.
Yeah, it's a weird reporting situation. Florida doesn't give you a straight up repeat taker pass rate, but we figured it out and we got it independently verified from some other sources. And our calculation was the repeat taker rate was about 26%. So it's a very difficult environment. There's no question about it. And if you passed one part of the Florida exam, A or B, congratulations, bank that score and go on and just take the other part. That is the bottom line recommendation that we're going to make there. If you did not pass either section of the exam, well, you're in a big group, to be sure. There were far more people that failed than passed, even including the first-time takers. And so in that circumstance, I think the thing that Megan and I feel very strongly about is that you need to bring every tool in your toolkit to this exam. You need to put all of the resources in. And so if you were in our course and you did not pass, I sent you a video going through your scores if you sent me your score report. And in that video, I am saying almost without exception, you need to add personal coaching, you need to add photo reading, you need to add the writing workshop with Megan. You should be doing the Calming the Chaos sessions with June. You'll hear about those later. You should be doing as much as you can to put in the way of tools that you can add to your studies. Because frankly, unless you do that, the test is just not, I don't think it's susceptible to just doing more of the same and trying to get a different result. Do you?
Yeah, I think when you look at the overall pass rate in Florida, as we said, is 44%. And even the first time taker pass rate was 62%. That's when you're looking at saying, okay, these are people who, for the most part, have just graduated from law school and they are sitting for the exam for the first time. And this is supposed to be a test of minimum competency, right? That's like literally what it is, minimum competency. And I think that when you look at that and numbers that are in the low 60s for a state that historically did not have those low of numbers for these the initial takers, I think what it says is that there's just not, even if you have everything working in your favor, just gotten incredibly difficult to pass. And so if you're someone who doesn't have everything working in your favor, right? If you have baggage from past exams that you have not been successful on, if you have a full-time job, if you have children or parents that you're taking care of, if you have responsibilities, as most of us do, right, outside of the ability of a 24-year-old to sit and study for however many hours a day, then it's just, you've got to do everything you can, I think, to even the playing field a bit, to be perfectly honest. And so I think it's definitely not something that we want you to stress about or beat yourself up over. It's just, we're just trying to lay out like this is the world as it exists right now in the land of bar exams.
Yeah. And to that, I would add this. We're about 100 days until the next exam. That means that in our course, we still stand by 300 hours to satisfactorily prepare and pass the test, which means about 20 hours a week. Now, that should be manageable for most people. But if you don't have 20 hours a week, then in our view, you should sit out the July exam and take the February exam, regardless of the jurisdiction that you're in, but start your studies now for that February test. There's no harm to doing that. We have a lot of people doing that. We even have people studying for July of 2023. So there's no penalty in our course to defer or postpone. And I would encourage you to look carefully at this. I know some people that did not do well, the shock really hits them and they take a week or two to recover from that. And then they find it hard to gear up again. And then suddenly a month is gone. And so instead of 20 hours a week, now they're looking at 30 hours a week. And that becomes really difficult. So if you are trending in that direction, seriously consider sitting out the next exam. There's no valor in my mind to going and taking the test when you're not prepared for it. And so sometimes it's better to just say, you know what, I'm going to give myself more time, get ready, and really make it happen.
All right, let's talk about New York then. So, New York had that 45% overall pass rate. They had a 61% first time taker pass rate and a 30% repeater pass rate. Just for comparison's sake, February of 2021 had an overall pass rate of 49%. So, it went down 4 percentage points on this one. And just so people know, because I know we have a lot of foreign educated candidates in New York had a 40% pass rate in February. So that's what we're looking at there.
Yeah. And remember that New York was crafting who could sit for the exam for about 3 exams or so, wasn't it, Megan, where they said you could only sit for the exam if you were a first time taker or if you'd only failed once and if you weren't a foreign attorney and so on. So then they opened the gates and said everybody could come in back in July of 2021. And then they kept the gates open in February of 2022. So there's some now we're finally starting to equalize out, and some of that surge of demand has, I think, found its way through the system, but still we're looking at very poor results. And I continue to believe the UB is the better exam to take out of all of these between Florida, California, Georgia. UB is the best, but still the numbers are pretty awful. And I think because it's the same test in New York that's in some of these small jurisdictions that had high pass rates, it really just goes to my thesis that it's really the sample size that mattered here.
Speaking of this idea of comparing across jurisdictions, the one place we can compare across jurisdictions is on the MBE score, right? Because the MBE test is given to everyone, with the exception, I want to say it's like Louisiana or somebody doesn't do it. So anyway, everyone else takes the same test, the MBE. And so it is really helpful for us to see statistically what's going on with that. And so I think the thing to keep in mind that should help buoy your spirits maybe is that the MBE has been very consistent. So looking back, there has been since 2018, the score has only fluctuated between 132.6 and 134. And this last February, the mean score was 132.6. So it has really been very consistent, hardly moving the needle at all. And so I think that should be encouraging to people that the MBE, for all of the faults of the written portions, for the way that the grading seems to be getting tougher, for the way that the test seems to be letting fewer people through, the MBE itself has been very consistent and seems to be a reliable indicator still. So I think if you study and go after the MBE, following the strategies that we give you, if you're understanding the material and you're able to pass the MBE portion, the test itself, the MBE portion itself is very fair and seems to be very consistent, which is nice in this sort of age of the scores just fluctuating dramatically everywhere else.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm seeing in looking at results as they're coming in from people is that photo readers generally did better than non-photo readers on the MBE, where we've had the big jumps, some really mind-blowing jumps, 30, 40 points, scale points, which it's insane almost. Photo reading is behind it. It's clearly a part of it. But even if you weren't a photo reader, the people that said to me, yeah, I used selective intuition, I leaned into it, got much better scores than the people that were struggling with that or were trying to grind through the questions and analyze them. So within your course platform, we've got a whole section on selective intuition in the MBE. I strongly encourage you to go back and review that, even if you've seen it before, and make sure that as you're practicing leading up to the exam, that you are using selective intuition to practice, because it's not something you can just switch on the day of the exam and make it work for you. But I think it's an important tool.
Wonderful. And we will continue on these calls to do sample MBE questions and walk through them with you guys. I think it is really helpful. We've gotten good feedback about that for people to see, okay, here's other people thinking through it out loud. Sometimes Jackson and I think about questions really differently. So I think it's helpful to see there's not even necessarily one right way to think through it, but you can get a feel for the strategies and methods that we would suggest using on the MBE.
Yes. And those modules are placed into your course. If you're a Celebration Law Review student, they're in your course as optional assignments. So you can see the ones we've done in the past. If you're not a student in our course, there is a product that just gives you those deep dives that we've done, and it's affordably priced. So check that out as well.
Great, thanks. All right, we've got a reminder, speaking about the UBE being the preferred test, reminder that both Michigan and Pennsylvania are switching to the UBE for this next exam. So July 2022 both of those states will be UBE states. I think this is good news. I think in general, we like to see the score portability piece. We like to see the consistency. Pennsylvania had just horrific numbers. I do wonder if there was something funky going on with people maybe waiting until July, thinking I'd rather take the UBE. I don't know. Their numbers were outliers on the low end, and Pennsylvania is a larger state. And so that was curious to me. And I wonder about that.
Yeah, I think that's a real possibility. And I expect we'll see a surge in enrollments in both Pennsylvania and Michigan for the upcoming exam. So if you're thinking about either of those two states, contact us. They are part of the UBE. It's not the same exam you just took, wildly different, no state specific material. So as we've gone through with Texas and New York and Illinois and a bunch of other states, it was a mind shift, isn't it, for those applicants to go, what? We're not talking about my state stuff anymore? No, we're not. So there you go.
Great. Let's turn to student questions now. The first one, I thought this was a great question. It came from the community group and I answered it there, but said I was going to talk about it here as well, because I know it's a lot of people deal with this, especially now that we're back to the in-person exam. So for people who travel back and forth, this person was someone flying from California or flying into California from the East Coast to take the July exam. I know somebody else chimed in saying, oh, I'm doing should I plan to arrive the Saturday prior to the exam to get acclimated to the time zone? Or what can I do basically to get used to that? Jackson is not a fan of flying. If you have listened to his countdown series, there's a video they talked about that. So you have certainly some expertise in flying cross country, but I will say of the two of us, I am certainly the one who I have lived a bi-coastal life for 20 years now. 20 years. Yeah, 20 years ago, I moved out to LA and at 18 and had started flying back and forth 1,000,001 times. So I will say that if you are going into California for the bar exam, you're in a really good spot, because what people struggle with when they come that way, obviously, isn't staying up late enough at night. So it's 6 o'clock, not six. If you're Jackson, it's 6 o'clock and you're like, oh, 9 o'clock back east, time to go to bed. But like you barely make it through dinner and you're exhausted. So you probably won't have a problem if you're doing that. If, however, you're coming from the West Coast or anywhere further west and you're going to the East Coast to take the exam, you are going to want to give yourself a few days to get acclimated, because those mornings are hard and the bar exam it's not that it even starts that early, but you need to get there early, right? And you do not want to be foggy and exhausted. And so the advice that I give is either get there early enough. It's usually, they say, a day for every hour of a time change. But alternatively, or if you are someone who just struggles, takes you like a week to get acclimated to a 3-hour time change, what I would suggest is get yourself onto that time zone before you have left home. So if you think you're going to need a few extra days, then you just switch and you go to bed, you eat meals, you wake up in the morning at whatever time it is, as though you were in Georgia, as though you were in DC, right? That's what I would say. So it's the same thing as we tell people to start waking up at the time that they're going to wake up for the bar, even if you're not traveling. We tell people to do that, start a few days early and get your body into that rhythm. I would do the same thing, even if you haven't left on the plane yet. I would get your body into that rhythm.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer that for the July exam, you should start that early in July. The sooner you begin that time shift, the easier it will be for you. Megan is right. I'm not a good east to west traveler because I can't stay up late at night. But the morning coming back to the East Coast can be brutally difficult for something like the bar exam. So you really got to get yourself ready for that. And if you're a foreign trained attorney and you're living in another country, it's even more challenging. Obviously, you could be dealing with a much more significant time change difference. So you really got to put yourself in that context, I think, to make it work. So it's a good question to be asking now, so that you can start preparing and setting up your schedule for that period of time.
All right, let's move on to studying for the upcoming exams. So first is a great question. This is from a student who was unsuccessful and is unsure now, as they start studying again, what order they should do everything in. So they said they spoke with you and you said, hey, let's take your worst subjects and really start there. We've got plenty of time. We're going to hit everything. Let's start with the weak areas. Then they said, how do I know, when do I do the 25 practiced MBE questions? When do I write an essay, etc.?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a little different. Normally, what we're telling people to do is if you've failed, go back and start at the beginning of the course and work your way through the course. do all of the assignments, but just do different essays. That's the primary distinction that we would make. In some cases where we get detailed information back from the examiners in the score report, we may know that there are 1 or 2 or 3 subjects that are demonstrably weaker than the others. If that's your situation, if you've got some indication that you are weaker in some places, the way that the course platform is set up is that you'll see all of the units and modules on the left-hand side of your screen. And you can literally just go to that subject and work your way through the assignments, the lessons in that unit. Where it gets a little tricky, what Megan was referring to is that typically we have you do 25 questions in a subject and then roll back and do 25 more later, and then later, and then later. So what I would do here is if, let's say you're studying torts because it's a difficult subject, when you get into the torts module, do the first 25 torts MBE questions, and then move on with the rest of your studies as you see them. When you get to the next subject that you wanted to do out of order, and let's say that's property, when you're in the property questions and you do the 25 property MBEs, then do 25 more torts MBEs. So in other words, you're just keeping your own record. Hey, I was in torts, I want to come back to it and do it that way. So you can skip around in that way and just make sure you're getting enough of the questions as you go to each subject. If that's too complicated for you, you can always just follow from start to finish and just spend a little more time in the subjects that are more difficult for you. But there's no way to just move all those units around and have them automatically switch with the structure.
Right. And we had another question with someone else who's resuming their studies, and it's more general of, okay, I went through my mourning period. I was sad about failing. I'm ready to start, fresh again. How do I do that? Where do I even begin?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good question. And it's one that a lot of people have. You start by going back up to the start of the course and looking at the assignments, and I think doing most of them. Now, I don't know that you need an introduction and an overview to the exam again, but I think you want to start going through the assignments as you see them and doing them and treating them as new material. So reading or photo reading again, working on your mind map, watching the lecture, working on your mind map, doing practice MBEs. Even if you've done those before, do them again and work on your mind map. And then when you get to essays, if it's, let's say, criminal law essay, you already wrote that one, that's fine. Just drop down to the end of the course and you'll see a resource that says do additional essays in crim law, for example, and you will see in that unit near the bottom of your unit list, all of the recent questions sorted by subject. So just pick another essay and write it there. Then go on with your studies as you see it. My recommendation right now, as I said earlier, is that everyone be studying at least 20 hours a week. So as you sit down to get started, schedule out the 20 hours for the next 7 days. Don't try to schedule 14 days or 21 days or 30 days. Just do 7 days and figure out in 1, 2, or 3 hour blocks how you're going to get those 20 hours in. Put it on your calendar and keep the appointment. Just start doing it. Momentum will build as you get underway, but it is doing those first set of assignments, I think, that build that momentum. So you've got to make sure you're doing that.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. So what about, great question next about changing jurisdictions. So somebody who's been unsuccessful and is just really frustrated and thinking, would you recommend, does it make sense to try to take this test in a different jurisdiction and see if I can get barred that way?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple of answers here. One is if you're sitting in Florida or California and you can get out of those 2 states, or even Georgia, if you get out of any of those 3 states and jump to the UBE, you should do it. I think Florida, Georgia, and California are insane. And I would get as far away from them as I could if I had a choice. Within the UBE, let's say you're sitting in the UBE and you're in New York and you were not successful, there is some advantage sometimes to switching jurisdictions only for a change of venue, for a change in your mental picture around this. The test is the same, and in our experience, the examiners grade it pretty uniformly. That is, as I see exam scores coming in across, I think I've seen now maybe 10 or 12 UBE states, I'm not seeing much variance as they grade essay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The hardest essay in one jurisdiction continues to be the hardest essay in another. So I don't think there's much difference there. But sometimes going from a big place to a smaller place like New Mexico, or I don't know, you pick your jurisdiction, Alabama, or somewhere else, West Virginia, there's something nicer about being in a smaller environment. It's not as intimidating, quite as crazy. And so you might want to consider doing that. Alternatively, I know that there's some people that like the big hustle and bustle, and maybe you want to get into a jurisdiction like Illinois or New York or New Jersey to take your exam. Fine, go ahead and do it. I don't think there's any downside to switching, and it doesn't matter where you sit, your score is still portable. So even if you're going from a 260 passing jurisdiction to a 266, as long as you get the 260 in New York, you're going to get into that jurisdiction you wanted to be in, let's say in Montana, Minnesota, or wherever it might be. The final piece of this is I would not go to a jurisdiction for the February exam where it's cold weather, but this is the July test. So take your shot, right? If Albany is much nicer in July than it is in February. So just keep that in mind. Weather does make a difference here. So I wouldn't be sitting for Minnesota or New York in February if it were me, but that's just me.
All right, great. The next question I think is a really good one as well. And so this is about somebody they're coming back to the bar. They've never used Celebration Bar Review before, but they have used other companies and have been unsuccessful. So they want to try this and give it a real shot. And this is a California student. And they said they're on a really tight budget. And so they're looking at all of these optional packages, right? All these add-ons that we don't say you have to do and we don't force you, but we offer them as to help people with whatever kind of works for you and your life and your needs. And so they said, I don't think we can do this. They asked if we could rank the importance of the packages. But I think, Jackson, can we have a brief discussion on what do you see as critical? What do you see as, or maybe not critical, but as the more important, most helpful pieces that as somebody who's like, can't do everything, what would you suggest I do?
Number one to me is the personal writing workshop with Megan. Just no question about it. I just think you got to have that foundational piece, particularly if you've been away from the bar for a while. I think that's a huge piece. The second piece that I think is really important to look at is photo reading. Now, photo reading isn't for everyone. Not everybody's going to like it. I would say right now we're probably 65% of our students are using it. I think it's an incredible tool. I think if you follow me for any length of time, you know that I've taught this for now 15 years. I believe in it. It works. I see the results. I think it's well worth it, and it's worth exploring. We put lots of material out there to help you evaluate it. I think that's the second big piece. So for me, those are the two big add-ons that I would consider talking about. What's your feeling there, Megan?
Yeah, I think the personal writing workshop of the add-ons, that is the one, it's the best bang for your buck, I think, is literally an hour, just you and me. So it is your opportunity to ask questions. I will walk you through literally every step that I want you to take as you write essays. I will take a look at an actual essay that you've done and give you feedback and help give you feedback. My goal in our second call is to give you feedback that then pushes you forward, right? So it's not just, hey, how'd you do on this one? I don't really care. You're never going to do that essay again. It's about what do I see from that we can extrapolate and move you forward so that on the next essay that you write and the one after that and the one after that, that you are moving in the right direction and improving. And so I just think that, especially this is a California student, the California bar is the hardest in the country. It has been for as long as I've been around, and it's just getting harder. And I just don't think you're going to pass if you are out there on your own going, gosh, golly, gee, I really hope my writing is okay. Like, I just think that's quite a risk to take. So that would be the one that I would say for sure is like hands down. You need somebody to look at your writing. Like, just in this day and age of the bar exam, how difficult all over the country, how difficult it has become to pass. I just don't think that your mediocre writing, or I'll just throw it all out there and see if it works. I just don't think that that's like the best plan you can do. So for under $300, you can actually know that you're doing the right thing. You can course correct while you still have plenty of time to make that correction and feel confident in the writing that you're doing.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is this is all determined and based on what your particular needs are. If you've got a real problem with test anxiety, for example, doing Calming the Chaos with June is an incredible value. And now with the extra 4 calls, it's a ridiculous value. And you might want to consider that instead of something else after the writing workshop. But the writing workshop is the universal. There's no doubt in my mind that every student in our course should be using that. And I just think that's where you begin. If you like the idea of photo reading, by all means do it, right? It's an incredible tool. And we've got tools for review later on, like BarMaps and the Multistate nutshells. We've got the Abundance for Life Masterclass. There are a lot of different things that we offer in the course just based on what your needs are. If you've got a problem with planning your time, do the time management coaching with Brianna. There's lots of things there. So I don't think we can say across the board for everybody what a top to bottom ranking is, but I think we can say those two things for sure.
All right. So I want to end today with it's actually a few questions that we got from students. So I'll say them really generally. And it's about basically people who have just been trying and they're putting their all into this exam and they weren't successful. So all these results are just starting to come out and people are processing through them and they feel like, what do I need to do differently? I thought just like trying everything. And now I'm holding on to this baggage, right, from these past failures. And I'm scared. I'm scared to move forward. And so, yes, June is our amazing fairy godmother who is so good at helping people with this sort of mental piece. So, June, what advice do you give somebody who very understandably this is just really scary now at this point for me?
It is scary, but scary is good. I say this so much. If it scares you, you're doing the right thing. And there's a difference between being scared and being fearful. Okay. Fearful can paralyze you to where you don't move. You don't take action. You just sit and you don't make progress. We don't want you in a fear mode. And I hear a lot, the fear of failure, which is to me a little ironic because failure is our friend. Failure is how we learn. If we never, ever failed, we would never, ever learn anything. So when we fail, which I hate the word fail, it's a challenge to really look at it, to really go deep on what can I do different? What can I do better? What do I need to learn? And so I look at failure as your gauge to keep moving forward and to really be open with it and not fear it, because nobody ever usually nails something the first time. Anybody that's a true success did this multiple times and then they recalibrated and then they failed and then they recalibrated and then they failed before they were very successful. So this is all part of the process. And one thing we talked about last night on our call is your why. You really need to figure out what your why is. Why are you doing this? Because this is not fun. This is not a great time. It just isn't. It is work and it's hard work. And for you to pass, you have to go all in. That's just the reality of it. But your why, you really need to discover why you're doing this. And because your why has to be stronger than your fear. If it is not, you won't pass. You won't get there. You will consistently talk yourself out of it. So first step, figure out why are you doing this? Why did you go to law school? Who do you want to help? Why do you want to be an attorney? And write it on a Post-it where you see it every day. Every day to remind you your why. And every time you get fearful, not scared, because remember, scared is our guide. We want to be scared, a little bit scared. But anytime you become fearful, remind yourself of that why. I'm here to help children that are in foster care. I'm here to help abused women. I'm here to bring diversity to the table. I'm here to be the voice of those that are being heard. Whatever your reason, your why is, let that carry you through, because it's going to get tough and it will carry you through, but it has to be stronger than your fear.
I think there's a lot of wisdom there. I think that gives you a sense of what you might learn from doing Calming the Chaos or by joining one of June's group calls. There's a lot of the psychology of failure that goes into the work that we do here. We focus almost exclusively on repeat bar takers and non-traditional students. And we know that there's always that element of mindset and how you approach the exam. And ultimately, I'm convinced, I think Megan feels this way as well, that we know you've done enough studies. We know you work hard enough. It's really what you bring to the table on those 2 days that makes a difference. It's how you approach it. And if you approach it from this mindset of fear, and I can't afford to fail and I can't afford to make a mistake, then you never learn and you never grow. And so the growth mindset is what we want to encourage you to do. And there are plenty of resources for free within the course that are designed to help you with affirmations, with meditations, with different tools that can assist. There's also Paraliminals that are an incredible resource. So there's lots of ways that you can approach this. We're just scratching the surface today, but we just wanted you to get a feeling for how we can help you if you're feeling that way. So thanks, June. It's great stuff, and I hope the people listening and watching will get a sense of what's possible for them.
Thank you guys so much. This has been wonderful. And I just guess I want to just encourage everybody to take that to heart this week. And as they're studying, be asking yourself and reminding yourself of what your why is, right? Is it your kids? Is it a loved one who is just so proud of you and the work you've done? Is it the work that you're hoping to be able to do as a member of the bar? Is it something, there's some drive in you, right, that got you this far? Because goodness knows you worked so hard to get even to the point that you are right now. And so hang on to that why. Really drill it down for yourself if you're not totally sure, if you've lost it, maybe you've lost sight of it over the last few years. Really try and spend some time, I would say, this week thinking about that and asking yourself that question, and use that to propel you in your studies this week.
Absolutely. Listen, I hope everybody has a great study week. I'm going to take a couple days over this weekend. I'm going to go enjoy the French Quarter Fest in New Orleans. So I'm going to disconnect from my devices for a couple days, but Megan and June and the rest of the team will be here to assist you with anything that you need. And then we'll be back next Wednesday. We'll take more questions. We'll have more for you. We've got an upcoming deep dive, I think, on federal jury selection, right, Megan?
Yeah, some jury questions. I thought those would be fun. We've been doing some dry stuff lately, so I was like, oh, jury selection is an interesting subject. So we'll see.
I think it should be fun. Thank you, June, as always, for being with us. Thank you for those of you that are here live today. If you're watching a replay, we appreciate you being with us. And if you are listening on the podcast, glad to have you with us as well. And we'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.